All right, welcome into the Draft Club. Paige Dimakos here with Keith Sanchez and a new look. We are at a different studio. We will not tell you, it's an undisclosed location. And I got 3 cameras for just me. So I'm having a hell of a time. And I'm happy Keith's not here this time because guess what? All the cameras are on your girl. The cameras are on your girl. So, Mr. Sanchez, the Jets, Jets, Jets. I have a feeling that's where we're going to start today. Is that correct? Is that where we're going to start today?
Oh, without a doubt, we have to start with the Jets, right? They continue to reset the bar by re-lowering the bar for NFL franchises, right? And this week we have an all-time low. There have been reports that Woody Johnson is making decisions, roster decisions, deciding not to trade for players based on their Madden rating. So first of all, shout out to Madden, right? You probably couldn't get better promoing for franchise mode, right? Than what Woody Johnson is doing. He may have stock in Madden at this point. But on the other side of that, it's like, what are we doing? You have a general manager. We're making football decisions based off you pulling up Madden ratings that are
Mm-hmm.
updated ratings by who, right? And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, if you want Madden ratings, hire the people at Madden. Then. Don't have a general manager, hire
Yeah.
the people at Madden. But I know that you have a situation. I know when you've seen this, right? There's little fire under you because of your
Yeah.
experience in the NFL, and having experiences with owners and things like that. And it's always the things that you talk about behind the scenes, right? So I'm gonna toss the rock to you so we can have this conversation. And what was your biggest takeaway that came from this with the New York Jets?
I think the moment that this story came out, so first and foremost, shout out to Diana Rossini and the athletic team for the
Yep.
amount of work that went into this because I think there's 5 writers that collaborated on the effort and time it took to put this story together. This is real journalism. And in the year 2024, it feels good that there's still this happening because this
Mhm.
is how you hold people accountable. And usually owners squash stories about them. They don't allow this shit to get out. They don't want anybody knowing their dirty laundry. And this is dirty laundry. This is dirty laundry for weeks on weeks on weeks on weeks. This is bad laundry. This is disgusting laundry. It smells so bad because the Jets are a horrible franchise that have been horribly run for a very long time. And I think the thing when this first came out, I read the story. I texted you. I was like, "We gotta talk about the Jets this weekend." And I think the thing that hit me the most was I want people to really fans to really understand how hard it is for coaches, general managers, and players to have success when ownership is this bad. It's impossible. Unless the owners relinquish control, unless the owners change up how they operate, things don't change. They just don't. And Woody Johnson is a bad, bad owner who allowed Madden ratings to dictate a Jerry Judy trade. Keith, I cannot fucking believe this shit. Are you serious? It's a Madden. It is a video game. We are not talking in the meta universe. This is the real world where real football matters. And he's consulting his 18 and 21-year-old sons to help make him decisions. What are we doing, Keith?
Yeah.
Like, this is unimaginable. It's unimaginable.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Paige, that if this came from any other spot but the athletic, I would have doubted if it was real, right?
I
Like
agree.
this is not a real thing. But there's so many different layers to this New York Jets conversation. The first, you start with the Madden thing, right? But they look so ridiculous because Jerry Judy has had his best season of his entire
My favorite
career
part. It's my favorite
this
part.
year, right?
Mhm.
On a bad Cleveland Browns team, but he's got traded away from the Broncos to the Browns. Jameis Winston, we know he's a gunslinger. He'll sling the rock, right? And he's had his best year, eclipsed 1,000 yards, and you would have came at a relatively low price, right? So
On a bad team.
on
Like,
a
I
bad
need
team.
everybody to understand. Deshaun Watson been bad and on a bad Browns team.
Yep, 100%. And then so that's that part, right? So you were flat out wrong with that. But then you go to the sequence of events for the New York Jets. So Aaron Rodgers obviously returns back from the torn Achilles, right? So he's here, right? He's not really here. He's on Netflix making making shows, right? So he's here, but he's not here, skipping training camp. You have the back and forth. I don't know if you remember those videos with him and Garrett Wilson, right? Where they were exchanging words. And some people were saying, hey, that looks like healthy dialogue, which it could have been. But
Mhm.
it don't look like it worked because their connection didn't work in season, right? Then it was supposed to be the whole Hassan Reddick. Y'all traded for Hassan Reddick and then he's in a holdout, right? So you tell him beginning season, previous of the season starting, I'm not paying you. You get the week 1 saying, we don't need you, I'm not paying you. You get the week 2 saying, we don't need you, I'm not paying you. Y'all start off, what, 1-4, then you say, you know what? Let's pay Hassan Reddick, right? Then Devontae Adams. Everybody knew that y'all were trading for Devontae Adams, but you say you don't want to give up this draft compensation for him. Y'all start losing more games, and what do? You decide to trade for Devontae Adams when it's too little, too late. We all know this.
And
Go ahead.
Keith,
What you
can
gonna
I
say?
can I can I interrupt you here because they played in the middle, right? This is their problem. Like you're talking about all the moves you're discussing, right? And you haven't even gotten to the rest of them. But they all are in this place where they can't decide what they want to do. And when
Mhm.
you're in that place, you're not going to win. Like you either got to commit to it or you got to be out on it. And it's like we want to be behind Aaron Rodgers. We don't want to be behind Aaron Rodgers. We think we need more receivers. We don't need more receivers. Like, what are you? What are you as a football team? And I think that's what happens when you have an emotional owner. Okay. We talked about went over to London, got his ass whooped. He was the ambassador for Trump to London. He got embarrassed in front of his friends. So he came home and had to fire Robert Saleh. Like, bro, what? That is not how you make decisions. You don't do things like that. Nothing they've done makes sense. It doesn't add up to, and Keith, you and I talked about this. There's no, what's the plan? What's the plan? Does it seem like to you that the New York Jets have a plan, Keith?
No, it's not a plan that they committed to, and the problem is this: it's the one word. It's ego, right? They
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
they want to appear that every decision that they making, right, is the right decision. And Woody Johnson looks to always be in a instead of a proactive, he's in a reactive state. And you can't win football games just consistently reacting to stuff, right? Like you're trying to react to Aaron Rodgers, you're trying to react to Hassan Reddick, you're trying to react firing Robert Saleh, you're trying to react, just doing different things within the New York Jets, and then that's why y'all record is what it is. You in
mhm.
in collusion with Aaron Rodgers helped put this situation together because you can say that Aaron Rodgers too was not all in on this situation
Agreed.
of the year starting, right? So the New York
100%.
Jets, they are receiving what they put in, right? My grandma used to always tell me this: you play silly games, you win silly prizes, right? And that's exactly what's going on. And that's
I think that
exactly
might have to be a draft club ism. I think we might have to add that to a big board of isms. But the one thing about this that I did want to mention because it's a broader conversation about ownership, right? And it's
yep.
I want to flip it on a positive side and then bring in the Bears, which is obviously negative. So I'll start with the positive side. And it's the reason I want to bring it up is because she is very rarely, if ever, being talked about. And that she is Sheila Ford. When Sheila Ford took over for her family for the Detroit Lions, every strategic decision that has happened since that point has led them to being in a place that, as a franchise, they have never been before. And that's because they have a plan, they committed to the plan, and they stuck by it. No matter what, they committed to who they are. They made smart business decisions, smart decisions for the team. They made tough choices. They traded away Matthew Stafford. These were not easy decisions. They
No.
were smart when you looked at the long-term plan. And she sat down with the GM and the head coach and said, "We got to tear this shit down to build it back up." Cuz that's what they had to do. And it takes a lot of man, you got to put everything aside to just go, yeah, this is really bad and we need to start totally fresh. And there's a lot of franchises that are like that. Mine included, okay? And Chicago Bears fans, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but I've been telling my dad this and he keeps not listening to me for over 10 years. Virginia McCaskey is our biggest enemy. I know she's 100 years old, but she is our biggest enemy. And she does not run the team well. And the family-owned teams, the old school owners that did nothing really. George Hallis paid $1 American for that franchise, and now it's worth like $10 billion. Like they didn't do anything to earn that. So, and they don't understand this is their only thing. It's all they care about. And unfortunately, they think they can make football decisions. Yeah, no, they can't. They're very bad at it. That's why we've never had a good quarterback. So you have to hope that things change. And that's what Kevin Warren was brought in to do. And maybe it'll happen. But at some point, you guys need to realize stop blaming the coaches, stop blaming the players, stop blaming the general managers. Start being pissed with your owners. Woody Johnson needs to be held accountable. Virginia McCaskey needs to be held accountable. If you want things to change, I told my dad, I said, listen, y'all start booing at the games. Fire Virginia. Get it, like somebody take that out and tell everybody this is how this shit changes. They don't like negative publicity. They just usually do a really good job of keeping it quiet. And Keith, that's where I think what struck me the most is where we started. Your original question is that I cannot believe this story got out. I
Yeah.
can't,
Well,
because this is horrible.
I read it, Paige, and you know what I said? Oh, this 100% came from the Solid camp,
Oh yeah.
or this came from people that are the Joe Douglas camp, right after
Mhm.
being fired, because those were detailed situations, right?
Oh
One
yeah.
a part of the article was talking about when he went to London, right? Then came back, and then one of his assistants poked his head in the room and said, "You from now on have to call him Sir Woody Johnson," or something like. What are we talking about, right?
That's
Like
the shit I mean. I'm like,
that's
it's
a
silly shit.
distraction. Like, yeah, that's a distraction. That is a football distraction that doesn't matter. But I look at the Jets, and I say this, and we talked about it with fans, and you kind of just hit on it, right? Is that as a fan, you have to sit there and say, okay, the coaches change, the players change, the upper management change. What's the one thing that's consistent? And it's the owners at the end of the day, right? And the owners, you know what I always wanted to see? Forget Hard Knocks where we're watching training camp. I want to watch Hard Knocks with the owners interviewing the
Ooh,
general managers and the
give it
coach.
to me.
That's
Yeah.
what I want to watch, right? Because I want to
NFL
see.
owners meetings. Let's
Yeah,
put some cameras in
that's
that
what I
shit.
wanna see, like,
Yeah.
that's the stuff I wanna see.
Yeah.
What is y'all criteria? What makes y'all excited, right, about
Ooh, I
who
need
y'all decide to hire? Because even when you go to the Panthers, right, with David Tepper and the reason why he hired Matt Rule, and he was talking about the guy sweats a lot or something like that, right? What are we talking about? Like, how does that apply and how does that matter? But Paige Dimakos, listen, I'll tell you this. The New York Jets, I feel like they are going to be the gift that continues to keep on giving,
Yep.
because with the general manager, they need to have that cycle. The head coach, they need to have that cycle. I have faith that Woody Johnson is going to deliver us more content. He's
Yeah.
going to deliver us more content throughout this process. But what I want to do is this. I want to flip this, right? We've talked
Okay.
about one of the worst situations in the NFL. I want to talk about ranking the top 5 teams in the
Mm.
NFL, the teams that are doing it right? That
Oh.
are getting the job done, that are process oriented. So I'm gonna go
Mhm.
with my 5, and
Okay.
I'm gonna say my 5. My 5 is right, and
Oh,
then
Christ.
I
Here
am
we go.
prepared to poke holes in your list because I know it's going to be a questionable list. So we're gonna have some fun with this.
I didn't even do anything, and he's already being rude. I can't even believe this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna go with my 5. First, they lost this week. I'm putting the Philadelphia Eagles as the
Mhm.
best team in the NFL. Then I'm going the Buffalo
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Bills,
whoa. Number 1?
number 1.
Okay.
I'm putting them at number 1. I'm putting them at number
Alright.
1. So I was supposed to read this 5 through 1, but I did opposite. I'm sorry. Then I'm going Buffalo Bills at 2. I'm going Detroit Lions at 3. I'm going Kansas City Chiefs at 4. Then I got a two-way tie. I'm gonna give it to the Baltimore
No.
Ravens.
There's no two-way
That's
tie.
what I said. I'm going to give it to the Baltimore Ravens because I had the Vikings and the Ravens in that
Mm.
slot, but I'm gonna go with the Baltimore Ravens. So 1 through 5 is Eagles, Bills, Lions, Chiefs, Ravens.
Okay. Your list is not bad other than I don't agree with having the Eagles up at the top. I just don't. And they're in my list, and we're
Let
not far off at all. Like,
Okay, let's hear your list.
our lists are very close. So, I'm gonna go 5 to 1 because
Yep.
that's how we're supposed to do this. So just for those keeping notes, just need to make sure that you guys know that, things are not done properly by Keith. So, it's
Oh
I'm
man,
bringing
here we
things
go. Here we go.
back to center, okay? Number 5, the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
And as much as it pains me, listen, this is a team I called them my dark horse to win a Super Bowl, and that's for a reason because this team just keeps winning. They just went to a tough environment against Seattle in a game both teams needed to win. Seattle needed it more, and they couldn't take care of business, and Minnesota did. And I saw a play. I mean, one of the dumbest throws that I have ever seen. Sam Darnold complete to Justin Jefferson, and I'm like, if they're doing that, good luck. Like that, if that stuff's working, and in the Legion of Boom, no less, I I'm done doubting them. Number 4, Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts went out with a concussion. That's the only reason they lost this game, and they still almost won the game. So I'm with Keith. I know he has them at 1. I wouldn't put them there, but I still believe in them. And as long as Jalen Hurts is playing, you guys are good. And also, Philadelphia fans, those takes about Jalen Hurts not being very good, Yeah, they lasted very little then. Little time, because now y'all know what it's like to have Kenny Pickett as your backup, and I think y'all want Jalen Hurts back. I think that's what we learned this past weekend. Number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mm,
And I put the Steelers in and not the Ravens because I've never seen a team get luckier than that Ravens team. You
mhm.
had a fumble on the 2, you had the Steelers deserved to win that game, and they did not have George Pickens out there. And that's why I'm sticking with the Steelers. I'm sticking with Mike T. And I think that team still has anybody got to go to Pittsburgh. It's going to be tough for them. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. And Josh Allen having an unbelievable year, just all time MVP. Can't say enough about them. But I cannot, in good faith,
I know it is going.
supersede the reigning, defending, 2-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, because as long as Patrick Mahomes is living and breathing, and as long as Andy Reid is the head coach, and oh, by the way, Hollywood Brown's back, y'all forgot about him. Yeah, okay. Good luck, guys. I straight up forgot. I straight up forgot. And I'm like, oh, Hollywood's back? Oh, great. Now Xavier Worthy's going to play where he's supposed to play? Oh, it's bad news. It's bad news for everybody, because as much as I want somebody to overtake the king, until it happens, until they are not the top seed, I can't put anybody else above them. I can't. So
I I
Kansas
I
City Chiefs
started
number
I started to go that route, right? But then I was like, "You know what? As currently, what am I seeing?" Right? And that's what I
1.
went with. And I'll start with this because it's a couple of talking points. It's 2 teams probably I wanna talk about. First, the
Okay.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
I think talent offensively, this is
Oh,
the
they're
most well-rounded football
agreed.
team.
Agreed.
Saquon Barkley is an X factor football player. To have
100%.
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, right, and Jahan Dotson as your third wide receiver is absolutely insane.
And the
Jalen Hurts,
defensive
you know
side
what
too.
Jalen Hurts did? Everybody criticized him, and then he had one of those Michael Jordan-esque
Yeah.
moments, right, where he sat down at the podium and said, "Is that what
Y'all
y'all wanted to
happy?
see? Are y'all happy now? Is
Yeah.
that what y'all wanted to see?" And I said, "You know what? I'm bought in. The guy's just a flat out gamer. Every time you challenge Jalen Hurts, he steps up to the challenge. They are philosophically not running things through Jalen, but that's just because they're hot right now. Saquon
Yeah.
Barkley is arguably the best NFL football player in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
So why not feed the rock through him? And then guess what? If I gotta torch y'all ass for 300 yards, I'm gonna light y'all ass up because I got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And then on the defensive side of the football, those young guys are starting to step up. Cooper
Mhm.
DeJean, right? Quinion Mitchell,
Yep.
Jalen Carter, N'Kobe Dean. So I think they're hitting their stride, and I think that they're just the most well-rounded
I
football
agree.
team that has playmakers on both sides.
I agree with you. I think that roster, one, they've got championship pedigree, right? They've been there. They've been in a Super Bowl. They were the team that gave the Chiefs the hardest time, if we're being honest. I mean, that was back and forth. It was the Super Bowl here in Arizona. Um, that team is so well rounded, and I think Saquon being that he's playing he's an MVP candidate to me.
Yeah.
I
Which
think he deserves it just as much as Josh Allen does,
this
quite
this
frankly.
reminds you of that year, I think, where Adrian Peterson won it, I believe, but
Oh yeah.
Manning had threw for like 45, 50 touchdowns also. It seemed like it's on that type of trajectory.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's where you look at this team, and it's like, "Oh, okay, you're gonna try and take away the run? Okay, well, guess what? We're gonna hit you over. We got this guy that you can't shut them down." I just maybe it's just Sirianni's goofiness, but it's just a little part of me that goes, "I don't trust that guy." I don't know. I think it's the him and his security guard. It's just there's a lot of stupidity that follows them around. So I think that's the best roster in the NFL to me, top to bottom. And they're not dealing with if the Lions weren't so injured, it's a different
Yeah,
conversation.
100%.
But
Yep.
Philadelphia is, the Lions are I know it doesn't make sense because they're still winning, but man, that team is in a tough spot from an injury perspective. They were the team I had on the bubble, so it was them and the Vikings. And the only reason I put the Lions over them is because I think the Lions with the injuries, if they end up having to, and they do, that week 18 game is going to be for the number 1 seed. Vikings Lions in Minnesota. I'm gonna pick Minnesota to win that game, and I'm sorry, Jet, who's losing his
Ooh.
shit behind the scenes. He is losing his damn mind, but I am not going to pick the Lions to beat that team currently. I'm just not. So that's why and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I want for the Hutchinsons and the people that I love in Detroit and our boy Jet behind the scenes here. I want the Lions in. But what I'm seeing right now is a hobbling Lion to the finish line, and that's not great. It's not
Yeah,
great.
no, they just flat out. We said it last time,
He's
right?
not lucky.
It's yes, it's war of attrition. It's a matter of staying
Mhm.
healthy. I want to talk about another team. I said we can bring up the
Okay.
Eagles. The other team I want to talk about is the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
And my question is this: we buy into Josh Allen, right? In the regular season, right? But it seems year after year, something happens, right? And not saying that.
Can I interrupt you here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the narrative is wrong. Do you remember the 13-second game?
Yeah,
Josh Allen
100%.
drove on the road
Yep,
at Arrowhead to
yep.
score, but he didn't not win that game. He
No, he
won in
didn't.
that game. It
So,
was the defense that lost them that game.
all right,
Like,
this
I
is
think that
where
narrative is wrong.
okay, and I don't. The narrative I was not about to be Josh Allen centric. It was
Okay,
Buffalo Bill centric.
I'm
And
with it.
are we in this spot? We flash back to about 10, 15 years ago. There was an
Okay.
Indianapolis Colts team that was
Oh,
led by a really good quarterback
oh,
that
no.
had a really good offense
Oh,
that
no.
year after year after year after year, they hit some type of roadblock, right? And you think about Peyton Manning in 2002, you say this guy's going to win 5. In Indianapolis, he got 1, right? And
Mhm.
my question is the Buffalo Bills this era's version of the Indianapolis Colts? Because I'm seeing a lot of parallels. I'm
I
seeing a team that's very reliant upon their all-pro quarterback having all-pro moments, right? But then in the playoffs, it takes a well-rounded football team to win football games. It takes you to have playmakers on the defensive side of the football to win those gritty games, right? If Josh Allen is going against a tough defense and the cap is at 22 points, right? He needs to score 22, but the other team scores 25, he end up losing that game. How many times did we think Tom Brady was going to walk into the playoff situation, whether that's playing the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals, right? So many different teams, and we like, oh man, Tom Brady gonna score 40. But you know what? He moves on to the next round, only scoring 17, but his defense holds the opponent team to 12 points or something like that, right? So that's the thought I have with the Buffalo Bills is that
think
I
it's a good
like them.
call.
I've
Yeah, it's a
liked
good
them a
call.
lot. It's just, is that the team that's going to have to consistently fight to get over the hump?
Doesn't that hurt you a little bit? Because you and I have talked about this. So, for those of us that are millennials, we grew up on Peyton Manning and Tom Brady,
Tom Brady.
and
Yep.
you were team Peyton or team Brady. That was
Yep.
this was an actual argument that happened all the time. And Keith and I have talked about how we held our ground so long. Okay,
We
it
did.
took a long time before we were like, oh, okay, he's won 5 Super Bowls. Shit, it's Tom, right? Like, it took a long time. Like, honestly, it took me till he became Tequila Tom. Until he left New England, I was still kind
Yep.
of holding out the Peyton Manning taste, right? It was bad. Okay, I'm not afraid to admit it. But this is that hit me. I was like, damn, this is. I don't think I've heard that, and there's a lot of parallels because that the Chiefs are this era's New England Patriots, right? They're the bat. Now everybody doesn't like them. They're the villain, and
And I
it's
don't
just
mean to,
what it is. It's the
yeah, I don't
same.
mean to
It's
pause
very
you,
good
but
parallels.
even you think Peyton's career, even with the Broncos, remember Joe Flacco threw that football like 60 yards right over the defender's head when the
Yeah.
Broncos all but won that game, right? And then Joe Flacco comes and throws that football. So it's just, I'm paying attention to different things. And obviously, you can't just say directly correlated, but I just wonder if it's going to be one of those situations where Pat Mahomes is more insulated and he's on that Tom Brady trajectory. And then
Mhm.
Josh Allen is equally as good in the same exact conference. They both in the AFC, right? But Josh Allen, he's going to end up getting the short end of the stick when it
Yeah.
comes to the amount of Super Bowls. And I don't know for sure, but
If we're being honest, Josh Allen has played significantly better football than Patrick Mahomes
yeah.
individually. It's not
Yeah,
even close.
and it
Like,
was the
it's not
same thing
close.
with Peyton, right? Like those
Yep.
first 3 Super Bowls that Tom Brady had, I mean, he was kind of the trailer type, right? While
Yeah.
they was running the football and everything else, and Peyton is throwing 50 touchdowns. It wasn't until 2008, 2009 to Tom Brady really hit his stride to where it was like, oh no, you can win football games just by putting a rock in his hands, right?
Mhm.
And letting him take off from there. So
Yeah, Josh, that one hurts me because I'm looking at the scenarios and I'm going, damn, I really hope they get over the hump, man. Like, it's Buffalo is one of those franchises that I don't know for whatever reason. I think it's because maybe that 90s. I mean, 4 straight Super Bowls, not winning. It's like, man, they had a tough road. They've
Mhm.
had a tough road, and they live in Buffalo. If I'm being honest, I just feel bad for them in general. Like, the weather is pretty much Buffalo, New York is pretty much the opposite of Scottsdale, Arizona. So, I think for that reason alone, I'm just like, "Yeah, I kinda want it for them." They gotta deal with it, and they're just small town community, they're easy to root for, and man, Josh Allen, if I had to pick a quarterback, that's the dude. He talking shit, he's hitting people, he's a grimy, goes after it, like, I love Allen. I love Josh Allen, so you're painting me, like, my heart hurts now that I'm thinking about him and Peyton Manning in the same light. It's very comparable. It's very comparable.
Yeah, and we'll see. And that was the tough thing about putting these NFL rankings together.
Yeah,
Listen, we
yeah.
talked about weather, right? And you talked about Scottsdale, Arizona, and you said Buffalo, New York, where it's cold as hell. Well, you know somewhere that got good goddamn weather? San Francisco 49ers. And guess what? They're going to have all the time they want in San Fran right now because
Ah,
welcome to draft season, San Francisco 49ers. They
mm,
lost this past week and the thing is, what is the direction? You have Brock Purdy, right? Who you're going to have to pay him. His agents are going to ask for a large sum of money. You have Brandon Ayuk, who is coming off a torn ACL. You have Debo Samuel, who is not consistently healthy. You have Christian McCaffrey, who I believe that the injury is probably worse than what people are saying, who
oh, yeah.
relatively didn't play majority of the year. You have George Kittle, who's a staple of that offense, right? You have two young guys that you drafted in Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. You have Trent Williams, who was also injured. Paige, I can keep on going. And the point is, they have a list of things that they have to address. San
Mhm.
Francisco 49ers, state of the franchise. Where do they go this offseason?
I think you're in that real position of having to take a long look and be honest with yourselves, okay?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think this is gonna be one of those, is the franchise ready to accept where they are, or are they going to try and hold on to this kinda middle of the road run, right? And this happens, and this I'm gonna talk about the owners again, the York family. Uh, it's it's really good to be in this spot where you're competing and you're winning 10 plus games. That's a really good place to be. But if you're really not going to be able to win a Super Bowl, are you really trying to win? Right? And that's the place there when you lose they've lost 2 Super Bowls now, right? With this current structure.
Hmm.
And they are in a place where they're aging. We need to be honest about where Christian McCaffrey coming off 2 injuries, where George Kittle, but like you're in a tough spot, and I think it's time to tear it down, guys. Like,
Okay, so
it's time to tear it
I'm
down
about to
because I don't
hold. I'm going to hold your feet to the fire because
okay.
the biggest thing that they have to do this offseason is make a decision on Brock Purdy.
Mhm.
So you're talking about Mr. Irrelevant,
Yep.
seventh rounder.
Mhm.
Are you paying him? I'm not even saying top quarterback money, the number one quarterback. Are you paying him upwards of $45 million to put him in that tier of a top 10 paid quarterback?
So, I'm offering Brock Purdy an offer sheet, and I think he's going to accept it. I do. I think Brock Purdy is, as far as who he is and what I know of him and that camp around him, I don't think they're gonna have to hit 50 mil. I think they're gonna be able to go $40 million offer sheet. They're gonna be able to slide that across the table and go, listen, if we do this and you are able to look at all the rest of the cap, look at the moves we're gonna make, look at the things we're gonna be able to do, and you're gonna win, there's that happens. I really do believe that they can do that. And for all the people that say Brock Purdy is dependent on the Avengers, name me a quarterback who's not dependent upon the Avengers.
Right.
Name him. Literally. I don't know why Brock Purdy gets more heat than anybody else I know for being exactly like everybody else. That is exactly what happens with the quarterback. If they don't have their top receivers, if they don't have their top running back, if they don't have their offensive line, guess what? They can't do shit. That's it. It doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes literally ran for his life in a Super Bowl. Ran for his life. You want to know why? Because 3 of his starting offensive linemen were not playing. This isn't hard, guys. Like, I don't know what it is, and I think it's because the mystique of Kyle Shanahan is a little BS, quite
Well,
frankly.
so
I think
that's
that's
the
part of
part.
it.
I think this that diving into the mystique of Kyle Shanahan. If I'm John Lynch, which we know that the dynamic is not exactly like this, right? But if I'm
Yeah.
John Lynch and I'm the NFL owner, and if NFL ownership tells me they're ready to blow it up, right?
Mhm.
If I'm John Lynch, the first thing I'm doing, I'm calling Kyle Shanahan. I'm saying, "Come to my office, big dog. We got to talk." And I'm saying, You look at Brock Purdy, you tell me this, because if you're this type of quarterback savant,
Mhm.
with Brock Purdy's physical tools, we should be able to find another, right?
Mhm.
We should be able to go into the draft, potentially draft a Quinn Ewers or somebody like that. We should be
Mhm.
able to take Sam Darnold, who was here last year. He was just
Mhm.
here. We should be
Yep.
able to go get Sam Darnold. How does
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins sound to you? Right. And because if we're going to blow it up and we're going to not have Debo Samuel, like you said, he's just like the Avengers thing, right? And so, what are going to be the surrounding pieces? Because we always say, right, the minute you pay the quarterback, your roster usually has some type of effect to it, right? If you
Yeah.
can't get
Yeah.
the quick passes off to Christian McCaffrey, then what does that look like? And I'm not
Mhm.
knocking Brock Purdy, right? But I think it's a real conversation that has to be had if we hold Kyle Shanahan in that light. If we feel
Yeah.
that Brock Purdy was truly a seventh round pick until he got to the San Francisco 49ers, why not keep the ancillary pieces and save you $40 million and go potentially get another quarterback?
Because I don't think the ancillary pieces are worth it. That's why.
Mm,
Quite frankly, I don't think you can count on. You got a Christian McCaffrey's had multiple injuries, multiple
yep.
years. Over 30 quarterback or over 30 running back. Brandon Ayuk, another like I don't even understand how anybody evaluates this year for Brock Purdy, considering Brandon Ayuk's been out the entire year. Debo Samuel's played less than 50%. George Kittle's been out. Christian McCaffrey's been out. Like, that's his whole team.
Hmm.
Like, literally his whole team. And they're
So
starting left tackle. Like, how on
it
earth
all
can you possibly look at this and go, I can evaluate the team? You can't.
Yeah,
You
it
literally
all comes down so do you have confidence that the trucker trailer conversation, right? That
can't. Mhm.
Brock Purdy can be that guy? Because once
I
those
mean, he's gotten
pieces
to a Super Bowl. I've seen it.
yeah,
Like, I've seen it.
with those pieces, you have not seen it
Correct.
without those pieces. So the question
Sure.
is, can
But
he
what
get it done?
quarterback name me a quarterback that's gotten to a Super Bowl without their key pieces. Name
They
them.
haven't. They haven't. So,
That's my point.
but where that leaves us this, that if we say that we're moving on from those pieces, then what are we getting from Brock Purdy? What version of
Yeah,
Brock Purdy are we getting? And then now are we a bad team with a $45 million per year quarterback? That's the
but that's
question that has to get asked with the San Francisco 49ers.
which I get, but that's why I said, like, if we're paying Dak 60, okay,
Why
Brock's
you gotta
worth
bring my guy
45
Dak into this? Well,
'cause
Dak
he needs
always
to be
catching.
brought
Look,
up. He needs to be brought up.
Dak is injured. Let my guy be. My guy
No,
chilling
I'm not
right now.
letting it be. I'm not
He
letting it
chilling
be because if
right
that's the threshold, he's the top paid quarterback,
Okay,
right?
all right. Yeah, he the
Well,
top paid quarterback.
if he's at this level,
Yep.
if I can pay Brock Purdy 40, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because he knows the system. I'm not having to like there's so much that has to happen to get that quarterback up to that position. And I get it. Drafting a rookie, you start that clock all over again. But who do you feel confident about? I don't feel confident about any of these rookie quarterbacks coming out at all.
No.
And that's where I look at this and I go, okay, if you can, I'm not saying I would pay Brock Purdy to be, oh, it's his time. He's got to be paid number one guy. I'm not doing that. I'm just not. And I've told you this before. I don't agree with how it happens right now because the top guys should be paid the top money,
Yeah,
not, oh, it's my time
100%.
to get paid. So I get paid. That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense
Yeah,
philosophically at all.
so this whole conversation, and I agree with you, right? If Brock Purdy's gonna take 35, 40 mil, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But when is the last time we've seen that, right? It's not
I'd like to see somebody try.
yeah, no, and I'm with you, but if that agency, right, and those agents are
Uh
not
huh.
on that wavelength and they feel like they have opportunity to cash in for 55, then now
Go
what?
ahead.
Are you letting
See,
Brock Purdy walk? That's the
see, so
question.
I am. And see, here's the problem that the owners don't have the balls to do. They don't have the ability to walk in and actually negotiate. Because if you, I go ahead. You think you're going to go get 55? Go ahead. What team's paying you 55? Dak was not getting that money, not even sniffing it anywhere else. Not even close. Let them go negotiate properly. Go in with a proper number that is that is fair. And if they don't want to take it, let them go. Let them go see. Go flirt. Go flirt because you're gonna come back. You're gonna come back. That at some point, owners got to start doing that because this stuff with the quarterbacks is getting outrageous. It just is, and we just talked about it. Quarterback, the most dependent position in sports.
Yep,
They
100%.
have to have so many other things. It is the football is an ultimate team game. This is not the NBA. We're not signing max contracts. This is not how it goes. And I think at some point we have to have that conversation. And I think this year, look at all it's going to happen. Look at the Kirk Cousins thing. Look at Dak Prescott. There's a lot of these quarterbacks that have gotten paid that now these owners are sitting back going, oh, I don't know. I don't know. And I think that's going to force these guys to actually think about it. And I think Brock Purdy could be the quarterback who breaks that system. I do. And I could be wrong, but I think if they go in with a fair offer that puts him in that 10 to 15 quarterback range, I think it gets done. And I think they'd be smart to do it because I don't trust Deebo Samuel. And you shined a light on the fact that it's probably one of the most overrated players in the NFL, literally. And I have to give you props for that because narrative wise, it's honestly ridiculous that it's never come out how bad it is. And Christian McCaffrey, I love, but I think you got to be real sure that those injuries are going to be a thing of the past because you're talking major injuries, like major injuries, 2 in a year. That's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. Brandon Ayuk, you're already signed. You got him. He's a young guy coming off of an injury. He changes the offense for you, but you got to trust your team. You got to trust that you guys can draft well, and you have. So go draft well and be the LA Rams because man, they seem to figure it out pretty quickly. They
They
seem
have.
to they seem to bring Puka Nacua and insert wide receiver in to become a star. So if you're as good as Sean McVay, Kyle, show us.
That
Show
and
us.
that's I think that's why I land, and that's why wrapping this conversation up, I'll probably go kick the tires on a couple different things. I have options, and I'm going to hold Kyle Shanahan's not feet to the fire, but I'm gonna look at his resume and what he's done with CJ Beathard and Jimmy Garoppolo, right? And some of these guys, where I'm
Mhm.
gonna say, listen, you've shown me that you need pieces. You don't necessarily need a top 5 quarterback in the NFL to win, right? Like you can
No.
win in other situations. And you hit on a valid point, Paige, that this year I hope that it kind of goes against the grain for two different things. We always talk about the running back thing, right? Well,
Mhm.
running backs do matter. And secondly, that your team begins and ends with only the quarterback. That is not true. It was
Yep.
never true, right? And
Mm.
we talk about the Tom Brady thing. He won 3 before people even knew his name, right?
Yeah.
So look at it from that perspective of building an entire team. And I think the 49ers, what they've done in the play calling at Kyle Shanahan, like I said, I call up a couple different people and I potentially put in some stopgap situations, but I'm not allowing myself to be held over a barrel to pay
Mhm.
Brock Purdy 55, $60 million,
No.
right? When I know
No
that the
way.
return and investment is not that. Because if it was that, he would have gotten done this year, and I'd be watching a quarterback throw for 45, 50
Yeah.
touchdowns because this is the year where you set yourself up for league MVP because you get to say that, hey, I performed so well without all these guys here. Good
Yeah.
quarterback, not great quarterback. We always talk about this. It's levels to this shit at the end of the day. But
100%.
Paige, guess
100%.
what? We had something happen this weekend in
Did
the
anything
college.
happen? Did
Yeah.
anything
The college football playoffs. We had history, right? We made history. We had quite a few games. We had Notre Dame, Indiana, we had Penn State, SMU, we had Texas, Clemson, we had Tennessee, Ohio State. I'm gonna
happen?
ask you this question. After watching these games, we've had a good 24 hours to let
Mhm.
this sink in.
Yep.
What is your biggest takeaway from the new college football playoff format?
My biggest takeaway is that weather matters.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is in the NFL, and that's where I come from, weather is talked about a lot because it impacts December football, that becomes January football, and it's a big talking point. You think
yep.
of the example I'm going to bring up, the Miami Dolphins going to Kansas City and looking like a completely different football team, fundamentally cannot do what they do on offense. And that has never been an impact to college football until now. It has never happened because teams like Tennessee have not had to go to Ohio in December to win a game that matters because we have never had a playoff like this and it's only ever been neutral site. And I think this is going to have a great impact on football. It is because you now are going to have to think about your team fundamentally differently than you ever have. Because you can't be a team like Tennessee or SMU and be flashy and run your offense, but then when it's below 50 degrees, your team can't play. Because that's what I saw. I saw it at Notre Dame because Indiana was a flashy team, even though they play in the Midwest. I saw it at Penn State against SMU. I saw it in every single game with the exception of the Texas Clemson game, which was just an overmatched and we saw Texas wake up and actually be the team that they are, right?
Mhm.
But the other games, the weather impacted those games dramatically. The offenses could not do what they wanted to do. Josh Josh looked confused on the Tennessee sideline last night. Like he literally looked confused. And it's because he has his quarterback who they had to buy some weird heating agent to put inside of him to warm himself up. And when they said that pregame, I went, oh, this is going to be a long day. This is going to be a long day. Because if you're doing shit like that, you are so not used to playing football in the cold weather. And as somebody who grew up in the Midwest, I can tell you, when the wind comes off the lake, there is nothing worse than that. It feels like you are getting hit with knives. And if you don't know how to deal with that, you can't play football like that. It's just not going to happen. And that's what I saw, Keith. And I think it's a very interesting part of this because it's never happened. They've never had to think about this. There's never been a team that has had to think about, oh, I'm Tennessee, I play in this kind of weather, but now I got to go to Ohio or I'm going to have to go potentially Michigan. I mean, think about all the potential matchups that could happen. I think it's going to impact how things are done in college dramatically, especially if they expand the playoff, which we all know they're going to do eventually. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, let's be honest. There's a lot of money to be made. And because of that, they're going to expand the playoffs. So that was my biggest takeaway, Keith. I don't know if you agree, disagree, but that was my biggest takeaway from the college football weekend.
Yeah, so as a guy that's from the South, right, the toughest part of
No,
America, the South,
no,
it
the
it it
softest part of
it
America.
hurts. It hurts to even admit this, right? But
Mhm.
that's what it looked like. It looked
Yeah.
like weather definitely played a part of it. And more than the physical, it was the mental part of it, right? Like just
Mhm.
being somewhere in a surrounding that you're not used to. And you talk
Mhm.
about the NFL and how they get used to it. I just read something that Spencer Rattler said that in preparation for their game against the Packers, they held quarterback meetings in the freezer at the New Orleans Saints
Oh
facility.
my
They
god.
went into the freezer so they can go through stuff and have conversations to get used to just standing around and talking in 10-degree
Because it's
weather, right?
different.
Yeah,
It's
because
different.
it's just flat out different. But I think this that it should, because what you said, I do believe percentage points, right? It is an advantage. And so for college football fans, it should make you more excited because the conversation should now be, okay, cool. I really care about being the higher seed, right? It's not a
Yeah.
matter of just making it to the playoffs. It's like, no, I want the home field advantage. Plus,
Yep.
I'm trying to outplay that Big Ten team because I don't want to go there, right? Like if I'm
Mhm.
sitting there and I'm LSU, I'm like, no, we need to win this last game, right,
Yeah.
against Texas A&M or Arkansas because I want to finish in the top 7.
Yep.
I'm not trying
You're
to
gonna
get bounced and have to go to, to South Bend, to Indiana, to Wisconsin, to Michigan. I don't want to have to do that because I don't
Yep.
want to put my team at a disadvantage.
And I gotta say this because it's just the truth. The Big
Uh-oh.
10 is the only that is the conference that has the advantage,
Yeah,
because in December, nobody from the Big 10 is gonna have a tough time going to Baton Rouge or any because the weather's not bad.
yeah.
The conference that has the advantage is the Big 10. And if you don't know how to play football like that, if you don't have a good line and a running back and play tough football, you gonna have a tough time. You are. And I think that's where this is going to become very interesting how it impacts recruiting, how it impacts just fundamentally how football, like we've seen the running back position be devalued across sports. I think this could end up helping propel, especially we've looked at this year across the draft landscape, how many good running backs there are, right? Maybe this starts to even things out a little bit more because college is going to be forced to play more like the league, and that's where it starts. So I don't know. It'll be something interesting. I think at the end of the day, I understand that things did not go, these games were blowouts, right? All the home favorites, they all won, covered the spread. But I want to end with this, and then I'm going to ask you for your biggest takeaway. I want to end with just appreciation for more football. I
Mhm.
understand that it wasn't perfect, but it was the first time, and the first variation's never right. Let's be honest. It just isn't. And to watch those home environments in college, as somebody who I went to Nebraska, all I could think about was, man, how cool that would be. For anybody, for any college to host those home games, it looked amazing. I was jealous of every team that got to host a home game. And I think that's the cool part for college, because that's what separates college from the NFL is those traditions and those environments and those home field, just the college aspect of it. And I think it's a cool thing with in the NIL era. I think that will help keep some of the traditions alive. So I just want to give a little appreciation before I know you're about to go in on the small school team. So, what is your biggest takeaway from this weekend? And I'll pretend like I didn't know where you were going to head.
You just gave it away, right? It's the small school teams. I don't want to hear anything no more. I'm done, in which we all should have been done. And the thing is this that people are letting their SEC hate get in the way of getting the best matchups at the end of the day. People were more proud that more SEC teams were not in the playoffs than thinking, man, what would be the best matchups in the first round? And the problem is this, that once SMU went down to Penn State, right? It's not about the fact that SMU lost. It was at about halftime when they were down, everybody in America knew they're not coming back. They are not coming back. And that's the issue, right? It's like we want to see competitive matchups. And that's what I've been talking about from the very beginning. And people saying I was being biased. I was wrong. I said, no, I've watched the film. I know the 12 best teams. I get records matter, but I know the 12 best teams in college football. And we've seen that this past weekend, right? You get
Yeah.
Indiana in there. I don't think Notre Dame played a great football game by any means, right? It's just that Indiana had a threshold that we identified. You know how we
Mhm.
identified it already, Paige Dimakos? It's because they
We saw.
played a good team in Ohio State and they
Yeah.
couldn't keep up. They
Yeah.
couldn't keep up.
No, I'm
As a
with you.
football fan, our Saturdays, right? Our Saturdays was based around watching college football. And two of those games, once it reached halftime, we said there's no shot in hell. We don't want that feeling. I want the
No.
feeling that, you know what, Bama can come back, South Carolina can come back, Miami with Cam Ward, he can make some plays because he's seen a defense like Penn State before. I want that feeling of being tapped in the entire time. You said something that the college football, you said that they'll get it right. You said that they'll make improvements, right? Well, the
Mhm.
problem is this: the college football playoff community, they had a chance to get it right. They had a chance to get it
It's
right.
the first time though,
No,
Keith. It's the
no.
first time. This
So
is their first time doing it.
Pete, I understand that, but the problem is this: that that was the problem was not something that y'all didn't foresee. Was this not obvious to people? Like
Yeah,
that,
I think yes, but here's my other and I agree with you. I sent you a voice note, so you have documentation that I admitted to you, okay? Like this was my one time riding for the smaller schools. My problem is I don't know like Miami has to go to cold Penn State or Ohio State, and I don't think the game's any better
so
because like that Tennessee team got their teeth kicked in. And that's the best the SEC. That's some of the best the SEC had to offer. Like, I'm sorry, SEC, but you're gonna have to learn how to play in the cold. Like,
yeah,
let's be totally
okay,
honest. I
no,
don't think those teams can go up north and play in the cold. I
let's
don't.
not. I so it's That's an interesting
You know.
conversation. No,
What's
because we have that we don't have enough data and sample size to say that, right? We can say we
yeah,
think that that's not the case, or it could be the case, or whatever that may be, right? But at the end of the day, we know the talent that's on the team, and there's no
for sure.
disrespect to SMU or Indiana, but it's just simple levels to this shit, Paige. And
Of
we talk
course.
about it, right? The best college football teams. Every time we turn to the draft, right? Those teams have 10, 15 NFL draft prospects. This stuff, college football is about how many NFL players do you have on your current roster that's going to give you the best shot to win an NFL championship. It's as
Yeah,
simple as that. I mean, to win a college football championship. It's as simple as that. And when you look at those teams, I said this once, I'm going to say it again. Really good stories. I support it. I think the coaches, the players should be well commended, right? But at
yep,
the end of the day, as college football fans, instead of hating the conference, we should be looking at how do we get the best football games
yeah,
possible. And if you ask me, I'm betting on Lenore Sellers with South Carolina to put on a better show than what we're seeing with SMU. I'm betting on Cam Ward at South Bend putting on a better show than what we've seen from Indiana. It's just
dang.
I'm betting on higher talent at the end of the day, and I get it. And they may have not won the game. I'm with,
Yeah, I
but
don't think
listen,
Miami. I think Miami gets their teeth kicked in because they got bad defense, and they're not going up and playing in the cold like that. Like that's my. I agree with you. I would have liked to have seen it. I think the only team that I really was pissed I didn't see was South Carolina. That's the
okay,
team I wish.
and
I
I'm with
think
that. Yep.
that one team. I think because of how well rounded that team is and how good of football they were playing at the end there. I would have really liked to have seen that team.
So
I gotta be honest, that Miami team, I don't trust that team
listen,
going they don't have a defense.
I'm with that, not trusting that. But I would say this: Alabama at Notre Dame, right? And you're talking about if Jalen Milroe gets it going with the run game, and we've seen them getting blown out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
fine, but watch another blowout. Like, but at least
yeah, for sure.
it was more so about the potential of winning.
Mhm.
Like we said, we knew once halftime, like even Indiana, they probably had the closest point differential, right? But anybody who watched that game knew that
Yeah,
game was
never
over. It was
yeah.
not close. Indiana
Mm,
scored like with the last minute or something. It was not a good football game. And
no.
that was just my whole case when I looked at this situation was like, hey, how do we get the best matchups in college football? I'm just for the people. The people just need to be for me. I'm for the people. I just want good college football matchups. That's all.
I'm for
And
the people?
and, and,
Wow.
and listen, and
For
this
the
is my
SEC
last
people,
thing.
let's be
Next
clear.
year, Keith Sanchez for
Okay.
playoff committee commissioner, and that's how we win this year.
Oh, boy. All right. For those of you who don't agree with that, please leave your comments on YouTube, Instagram, just send me a DM, okay? Let's just get right to the point. I understand that you do not want him to be the commissioner because then it would be an all SEC shenanigans fest. And quite frankly, I would have liked to have seen more SEC teams go up north and get their teeth kicked in. So you know what? Put them in. Put them in.
We'll
I
see. All
can't
I can
wait.
say this: if the
Can't
SEC
wait.
win this championship this year, I will be intolerable. Draft club from one season to the next season. This is gonna be a long
Why? Because
summer.
they gifted Georgia the easiest path of all time? Like, good God. Are we serious? I'm not even gonna allow that to happen because it is a you wanna know what the playoff committee messed up the most? How the seeding works. That's how on earth is Oregon the number 1 seed and they got the toughest path? Make that shit make sense. Make that shit make sense,
That's
Keith.
why I should be the commissioner. That's
Alright.
another vote for me being the commissioner.
I need to see what you're gonna do as the commissioner. I need to see some bylaws. I need to have an understanding of what this is gonna look like before I can put my stock behind you. Okay, so I'm gonna need you to put those together for the next episode of the Draft Club.
I got you. I got you.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, for Keith Sanchez and Paige Dimakos, you've been watching the Draft Club for players only.